In a world completely and unfairly dominated by men, women are able to rise above the oppression of a patriarchal society. Women dutifully take on the burdensome responsibility of caring for their homes and family on their own. Women exhibit undeniable bravery in the face of adversity. Women made America. Wait, what? The Civil War was an event of drastic measures. It would break everything known to be true about the United States of America and reform it into a new nation. It would challenge the laws of the past and create new opportunities. And for women, the Civil War was a chance to break free. In the time before the war, as men's work moved away from the home and into shops, offices, and factories, the household became a new kind of place. A private, feminized, domestic sphere, a haven in a heartless world. True women were thought to be those who devoted their lives to creating a clean, comfortable, nurturing home for their husbands and children. The antebellum era brought radicals such as Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and their ideas. But with the outbreak of war and two very opposed sides seeking support from all members, these feminist ideals were finally able to be put into practice. Meet the Grimke sisters, two witnesses to the Civil War that tirelessly fought for abolitionism and women's suffrage. Sarah is the 8th child in her family, born in 1792 in Charleston, South Carolina. And 13 years later, her sister and companion, Angelina, is born. Despite their age difference, the sisters find common ground. Both are subjugated to a harsh father who strongly believed in the institution of slavery and held firm to his idea that women were inferior creatures. Finding the circumstances at home unsuitable, both sisters leave for Philadelphia, eventually becoming Quakers and joining the Society of Friends. Separated from the bigoted ideas for once familiar to them, the girls grow into women, and they are not the type of women to stay quiet. At a time when the relations between the United States, North and South, grew increasingly turbulent, these two do not compromise their former teachings and their new opinions. With younger sister Angelina in charge, the two become loud advocates for abolitionism and women's suffrage.
I want to be identified with the Negro. Until he gets his rights, we shall never have ours.
Back home, they are rejected. But the two do not stop and leave behind the domestic housewife stereotype in favor of public speaking for their cause. Their mission carries on throughout their lives and until their deaths, ending shortly after the surrender of the Confederacy. All fights are fought to protect an idea or ideas, but some take a more physical form. When impassioned fathers, brothers, and husbands left their female counterparts to fight for their cause, they left behind equally impassioned women. And not all these women would accept the role given to them. Without brave soldiers fighting throughout the Civil War, it would have been impossible for either the Union or the Confederacy to have a victory. Many men put their lives on the line, lived in camps with horrendous conditions, and suffered post-war consequences, if they were lucky to make it out alive. Little did many people know that women contributed to the victories of battles fought, lived with men in camps, and suffered the same casualties. In July of 1863, a Union burial detail at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, made a startling discovery near Cemetery Ridge. Among the bodies covering the ground, the Union men found a dead woman wearing the uniform of a Confederate private. Most of the population, including generals, were unaware of how many women were actually fighting in the war. In order to not get caught and possibly thrown in jail, women soldiers of the Civil War therefore assumed masculine names, disguised themselves as men, and hid the fact that they were female. Because they passed as men, it is impossible to know with any certainty how many women soldiers served in the Civil War. At the end of the war, it was well known that women soldiers had been fighting. Both the Union and Confederate armies forbade the enlistment of women. Yet Army recruiters, both Northern and Southern, did not ask for proof of identity. Some women even went to the extremes by bounding their breasts when necessary, padded the waists of their trousers, and cut their hair short. Someone such as Jenny Irene Hodgers, alias Albert D.J. Cashier, an Irish immigrant, 19 years old, was enlisted in the year of 1862 and served until 1865. A whole whoopin' whoppin' 4 years! She participated in about 40 battles, much more than the majority of the women who were fighting at the time. After the war, Cashier served as a laborer, eventually drew a pension, and finally went to live in the Quincy, Illinois Soldiers' Home. It wasn't until a surgeon at the home found out that she was a woman. After finding out that she lived her whole adult life as a man, this story became extremely popular in the newspaper. Not many years later, she then died in 1914 in an insane asylum. Soldiers are only part of the story. A war is not fought with blood alone, but also with strategy. One of the most valuable resources in the planning of battles is information. Here again, women show their worth in a male-dominated war, only this time as spies. Best female spies were unmarried, beautiful women, unburdened by children and able to coax information out of young male soldiers. Women were perfect for the role of spy because they were easily trusted and viewed as non-threatening by soldiers who, enamored by their beauty, would often let their guard down around them. Men didn't expect women would get involved in such dangerous jobs, so women spies often went undetected during the early phases of the Civil War. Many names have become legend, such as Harriet Tubman, Belle Boyd, Elizabeth Van Lew, but of all these names committed to history, perhaps one of the most influential is Rose O'Neal Greenhow. Born officially as Maria Greenhow, the famous Rebel Rose was raised as a lady of influence in the South in a strict boarding school. With her marriage, she quickly rose in the social ladder, becoming quite popular among her socialite friends in Washington, D.C. After losing her husband, Greenhow became more sympathetic to the Confederate cause. She was strongly influenced by her friendship with U.S. Senator John C. Calhoun from South Carolina. Greenhow's loyalty to the Confederacy was noted by those with similar sympathies in Washington, and she was recruited as a spy. July 9, 1861. Wild Rose, as she is known more commonly, begins her most daunting task, the battle now known as the First Battle of Bull Run. The relaying of messages back and forth about Union military movement, legend says she would carry messages in girls' hair, is accredited in a partial part of the victory for the Confederacy. Even Jefferson Davis was forced to acknowledge her role. But her undying support of the Confederacy did not come without sacrifice. Her wide circle of friends on both sides of the sectional split, although a great advantage, also flagged her as suspicious, and she was eventually forced into house arrest. While searching her house, the Union found extensive intelligence materials left from evidence she tried to burn, including scraps of coded messages and maps of Washington fortifications and notes on military movements. Her most cunning ploy, however, was the love letters she sent abolitionist Republican U.S. Senator Henry Wilson from Massachusetts. She considered him her prized source, and she gave her data on the number of heavy guns and other artillery in the Washington defenses. Prison, in any case, did not break her spirit. Greenhow continued to pass along messages while imprisoned, and even once managed, in an act of defiance, to fly the Confederate flag. As she died bravely, when she was aboard a ship, it grounded while fleeing a Union gunboat. Fearing capture and re-imprisonment, Greenhow fled the grounded ship by rowboat. A wave capsized the rowboat, and Greenhow drowned. However, her legacy of courage and unfailing spirit, so reflected of many women at the time, lived on. As it is obvious to see through these various examples, women, even all the way back in the Civil War, exhibited great strength and valor. Not only did these females have to dauntlessly face potentially lethal war situations, but they also had to use their great cunning and intelligence to trick the very men that they fought alongside. In the case of the Civil War, as many as any, it is plain to see that women are anything but the weaker sex. If it were not for the guile, precise judgment, and perseverance of the countless women of this period, our great country would certainly not be anything like it is today.
Roll another. Yeah. La da 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 da. La da da. La da da da. La da da da. La da da da. I was gonna clean my room until I got high.